Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to the Dean's Roundtable. My name is Randy Priluck. I am the Associate Dean for Undergraduate Programs in the Lubin School of Business. I am pleased to introduce you to one of our outstanding marketing alums, Mike Feldman. Mr. Feldman is president of the Americas Operations for Xerox Corporation. He was named to this position effective January 1st, 2019. He was appointed an executive vice president of the corporation effective January 1st, 2017, and has been an officer of the company since 2013. In his role, Mike leads the company's go-to-market teams in the US, Canada, Mexico, Central and South America to bring Xerox's full portfolio of product offerings and services to current and new clients and partners. He leverages sales activities and maximizes coverage through direct, indirect, online e-commerce channels to drive revenue growth. Prior, Mike had been president of North America Operations, leading the go-to-market teams in the US and Canada. Beginning in 2013, Mike served as president of large enterprise operations for the Xerox technology business. He was responsible for worldwide strategy, offering development, operations, marketing, sales, delivery, and support for Xerox's large enterprise operations, which included document management outsourcing, managed print services, technology sales, and content management. Mike joined Xerox in March 2013 as Senior Vice President of the Global Document Outsourcing Services Business Group, where he was responsible for driving revenue and profit growth of its global managed print services business in large enterprises and indirect channels. I'll tell you, I practiced that a lot of time. Still having trouble getting that out. It's a lot of work. Prior to joining Xerox, Mike spent 24 years at Hewlett-Packard and was HP's vice president and general manager of the Managed Enterprise Solutions business unit in the Imaging and Printing Group's Americas organization. Mike holds a bachelor's degree in marketing from Pace University, and I'd like to welcome him to our Dean's Roundtable. Mike, thank you for joining us. I guess just to get started, we want to hear about your PACE path and what led you to come to PACE and how you progressed here.
Yeah, thanks, Randy. And I don't know who sent you all that information, and I'm sorry everyone had to go through all of that. That was a lot, but thank you for the intro, and good to be here with everyone. So my path, my parents made a deal with me. I don't know how this happened, but they came to me and they said, I have an older brother. He went away to Springfield College in Massachusetts. And he went there for 4 years and lived on campus. And he got a student loan and kind of worked through that. My parents made a deal with me and they said, if you will go to a community college for the first 2 years, and then transfer to a university for the junior and senior year, we'll pay for all 4 years of your college. So I said, that sounds like a pretty good deal. So I did that. I grew up in Rockland County. Just over the Tappan Zee Bridge, or I guess it's now the Cuomo Bridge. So I grew up there, and Rockland County was a kind of a natural place for me to go to school, do the first 2 years. And then I was looking around for a university. And I guess I did want, it's a long time ago, so I'm trying to remember, but I guess I did want to stay somewhat close to my family, somewhere where it was a drive a distance away as opposed to really far. And Pace University came up as an option. I came to view the campus and, meet with different people and hear about the programs that existed here for education and also for placement into a real job and career services and things like that. And I quickly decided Pace was the place I really wanted to come to. And so I did that. That was in 1986, before most people on this phone were born, probably, and had majored in marketing, as you said, Randy, and lived on campus for those 2 years. It was actually in Pleasantville, and it was the first year that Pace had opened up those suites. They're probably like really old now, or maybe they're new. There's something new, but it was the first year where there was a suite where you had 8 people in a suite. And there were 4 bedrooms, 2 people to each bedroom kind of thing. And that was great. It was a really great experience.
That's wonderful. I'm glad you had a good experience on our Pleasantville campus. We still have those kinds of opportunities available to students there and also in New York. So tell us about your first full-time job and what that was like, because I'm sure students want to hear what it's like when you first started.
Yeah, so one of the things that I really appreciated about Pace University was that it helped me get to an internship while I was still going to school. So my last year of college was one of the most difficult years I've ever had in my entire life. And by difficult, I mean busy and exhausting. So what I did was I got an internship at IBM in Westchester County. And I worked there Monday through Thursday from 9 to 5, working on different projects for a guy that was a vice president of marketing at IBM. And I did that 9 to 5. I took classes at Pace at night, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then on Friday, after my day at IBM, I got in the car and drove home to Rockland County, where I was a waiter at Red Lobster, and did that Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday so I could make some money, because the internship doesn't really pay you a lot of money. And I had a car and I needed to pay for that. So it was exhausting, and trying to find time to do homework and study for tests and exams was very difficult. But it was very rewarding because the IBM experience was very important. When I then was graduating and was looking for a full-time job, at the time IBM was not hiring. I actually joined IBM on maybe one of the worst days in the stock market. It was in 1987, and it was known as Black Monday. It was when the stock market crashed of 1987. That was my first day. So I'm there at IBM. I'm in one of their corporate headquarters facilities, and people look really stressed out. And I'm like, wow, corporate America is a stress place, but it was because the stock market was crashing. And IBM definitely took it hard in those months to follow, where they had layoffs and so forth. So what normally, I think, when you do an internship, you hope that company will hire you. But when I graduated, 6 or 8 months later from Pace, they weren't really hiring much. But the great thing was that I had this on my resume. So now prospective employers can see that not only did I go to the university and graduate with good grades, but also that I'm pretty ambitious. I worked hard. I got really good experience. At the time, IBM was, a blue chip, well-known, well-respected company. They still are to some degree today, but they're not Google and they're not Apple. But in that time, they were the preeminent corporation. It was just so happened that they were headquartered right there near Pace in Westchester County. But when I went to interview, the funny story was I took a job with a forms company, a paper forms company, a company called UARCO. I'm not even sure if they're still in business. Probably not, but maybe they are. But I interviewed and I accepted the job. I then went with 3 of my friends backpacking through Europe for about 5 weeks. I mean, literally one backpack, and we went to Greece and Turkey and Italy, and there was one other place, Greece, Italy, Turkey. There was one other country we went to. I can't remember which one it is now. But we had a great time. When I came back, I landed at JFK. My parents picked me up from the airport, and my mother said to me, "Oh, by the way, tomorrow you have an interview with Hewlett-Packard." And I'm like, wait, first of all, who's Hewlett-Packard? I'd never heard of them, which was kind of crazy. They weren't a consumer-based company like they are today. They were very B2B. And so I guess it would be possible not to hear of them, but I didn't know who they were. And I said to my mother, I already took this job with UARCO, so why do I have an interview? And my mother was like, listen, this is a great company and you should at least talk to them. And I did. I came to learn that Hewlett-Packard, or HP as we call them, interviewed about 40 people for that job that I eventually got. So how did I get the job? How was I chosen out of 40 people? A big part of that was IBM was on my resume. So I always tell people, just graduating from a great university sometimes is not enough. You have to do extracurricular things, whether that's sports or other things, and having some work experience is very, very helpful. And that's how I got the job and started my 24-year career at HP.
So what should students think about with B2B? I mean, how do they get into that? You know, I understand that you found your way to IBM and then to Hewlett-Packard. Are there ways for students to think about business to business marketing and jobs in that area?
Yeah, as I think back to it, I did work with recruiters at the time. So that's, again, I graduated a long time ago. I'm old. So maybe things have changed, and maybe there's, with online stuff and, all kinds of sites that you could go to, maybe there's better ways to find jobs today. But the way I did it partly was through recruiters. And I remember it was a recruiter actually that called my house looking for me while I was backpacking through Europe and spoke to my mother. And I remember the recruiter, when I got back, I called the recruiter, and the recruiter prepared me a little bit and said, this is what HP does. This is how big they are. Here's some things that you might want to think about for the interview, things that, is important to them. And, this and that, so some tips and tricks. And that's how I got in. I never really thought back then, B2C versus B2B. I think I always thought B2B for some reason. I guess I just, thought that from a career standpoint, that, there might be bigger opportunities down the road for that. But I think recruiters could be one way. Obviously, I always tell people, build your network. Everyone, you all have family, you have uncles and aunts and parents and, friends, and your parents have friends, and people know people. In fact, we at Xerox just hired a guy who I met at Pace University, a guy named Mitch Berliner. Gary knows Mitch really well. Mitch and I went to Pace University together, and we've stayed very, very good friends. I was the best man at his wedding. I mean, we're very close. And he told me his son Ben was looking for a job. And I said, you know what, let me put you in touch with some people, because we might be looking for people. He's now working for Xerox. So that's your network. This Ben's father knows me. I know the right people at Xerox, and there you go. So definitely that is important. And, if that's your passion, if B2B is your passion, then, certainly reading, trade journals and, newspapers, and going online and researching companies. And, I always say, be a student of the game. You always want to be learning. You always want to invest some time to, be smart and be current and know what's happening in the environment out there.
Thank you. I'd like to give the students a chance to ask any questions they might have of Mike. And if you have a question, you can just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask. And if not, see, anybody want to ask a question?
Yeah, hi, I have a question. Oh, sorry.
Oh,
go ahead.
Perfect. No, go for it.
Oh, thank you. Hi, my name is Chukazuma. I do have a question. You mentioned that you did go to Rockland County Community College before going to Pace. You mentioned how Pace has shaped your senior year. You went to, during your senior year, you got an internship at IBM and then ultimately ended up at Hewlett-Packard. But your experience during your 2 years in at Rockland, did that help shape your career in any way?
Good question, Chuk. I think I actually got a pretty good education there, especially for a community college. And as you know, your first 2 years tend to be pretty liberal arts types of classes. So I think for that experience, it was good. I was also doing some work in the evenings and weekends there as well. I worked at a retail store and kind of worked in the warehouse and emptied the trucks that were coming in with all the goods. It was a big department kind of store that I worked at. So I think it was good for what it was worth. And I think the most important, at least this was my feeling, the most important part of my education was the last 2 years where you were getting into some really more advanced classwork. And that was good to, graduate from a community college and move into Pace University.
Thank you.
Sure.
We actually now have an articulation agreement with Rockland Community, so the students can come right over. Chuk, are you from Rockland?
No, I'm not. I'm from Westchester.
Okay, great. Who else had a question? I think someone else had something to ask.
I did have one question in the chat box, and a reminder to all students, if you can direct your questions to the icon that says IBDA. That way I can ask them and read them off of the chat. But it sounds like you balanced a lot as a student. What helped you in your career about that experience? Was there anything that hindered your growth because you were managing so many things?
Good question. I think it was really a good training ground for me to be able to juggle a lot of things. It certainly taught me time management and responsibility, and I think discipline as well. I mean, I'm sure I would have rather been out with my friends, going out and partying and doing all the fun things that everyone does. And I did some of that, of course. But given how busy my schedule was, I had to kind of prioritize and pick and choose. And when you get into the real world in your careers, it's really about that. It's about prioritizing what you're going to work on. It's about, carefully choosing how you're going to spend your day. I've been very fortunate, to move up in my career. I started as basically a salesperson, and now I run, a multi-billion-dollar part of a Fortune 500 company. And the way that worked for me was, again, being very cognizant and smart about where I spend my time, always looking for the biggest return of where I'm spending my time, and working, with some speed and being very results oriented. And what I said before about, building your network is true in your careers. Building your network in your career is one of the most important things you can do. You have to have results. You have to be, decent at your job. You have to be committed and dependable and all of those basic things. But you also have to build a network, and that can help you, see other opportunities and help you move up the career path if that's what you want to do. Everyone, has to choose what's most important to them and where they really want to go in their career. But that worked, really well for me, I would say.
Would you give us a little background on sort of what you do on a daily basis in your role? I think that would help understand what it's like.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I'm running a multi-billion-dollar business. I have direct responsibility in the Americas, so US, Canada, and Latin America. And I am directly responsible for our go-to-market. So all of our sales and all of our service delivery. And then we have shared functions at Xerox that help with collections of cash with our clients, accounts receivables, accounts payables as we're paying to our vendors, supply chain, making sure that our warehouse has the right type of equipment, all of that, and every other kind of supporting function, including marketing is a supporting function as well. So what I do I love to spend time with customers. I get a lot of energy personally out of spending time with customers, hearing from customers, understanding what's their pain points, what's interesting to them, what are they looking for. And I take that information back into the company, and I try to make sure that I'm shaping the portfolio of solutions that we have. A great example of this, just to kind of really make it hit home, is we're in a pandemic. People are not going to the office quite as much. Today I happen to be in my office, but a lot of times I'm working from home. A lot of our customers have their people working from home as well. But the mail is still being delivered, right? Mail is essential. So as mail is being delivered, if people have been home since March, that mail could be stacking up, and there could be important pieces of mail in there that somebody needs to get. So we came out with a solution called digital mail. We can go on site to the company, we can scan all of your mail, and if it was addressed to me, they would scan it in and they would email it to me. And in this, we're using things like artificial intelligence and robotics to make sure that if that piece of mail is a check, that it automatically gets deposited and routed to the bank, because we don't want to waste time. Cash is important, and we want to deposit that money right away. So there's a lot of interesting technology that we've put into this. And we have had, before the pandemic, we had no digital mail customers. After the pandemic, we have now probably about 20 Fortune 500 companies, like really big companies that you will all have heard of, that are using Xerox to do digital mail. And that's because we're listening to our customers. So I love doing that. But I run a P&L. So I'm responsible every quarter for the revenue and the profit of my business unit. And that means I have to make sure that we have enough in our pipeline. Our salespeople are active and they're working hard and they have the right tools and the right solutions and they're trained well to deliver that value to our clients in their presentations and customer meetings. And then I've got to make sure that as we deliver the services to our customer, we're doing that in the most efficient way possible, because that's how I get profit. If I take cost out of things that I don't need to have, that digital mail is a great example. If I can use artificial intelligence and robotics, instead of putting 4 people on site, maybe I only need 2 people, I just save 2 headcount and I'm more efficient and it's a better service and I can make more money. So I spent a lot of time thinking about, how we're going to make we're a publicly traded company. So we report our results every quarter and it's there for everyone to see. And if you go onto Xerox.com and you find the information about investors, if you look at our earnings deck that we just presented a week ago, where we announced our earnings, you'll see the Americas will be called out in that. And so my revenue is very visible to the outside world. And that's a little bit of a report card for me. I want to make sure that it's as good as it can be. By the way, last quarter was not great compared to Europe, because Europe started with the coronavirus first. They got over it to some degree and brought a lot of people back while the US was still kind of surging. Now Europe is back on lockdown in many countries, and we're seeing cases spike here as well. But these are all things that you have to monitor and value. Today, as an example, because we just announced our earnings, I will have a call today at 2:00, just like this. Instead of using Zoom, we use Microsoft Teams, but it's the same thing, with about 2,000 people in my organization, to share with them how we did in the third quarter, what were our highlights, what were things we're most proud of. We'll recognize some people and some great new deals that we won. And we'll talk about what do we need to do right now in Q4. This is our biggest quarter. October, November, and December is always our biggest quarter. So what are the things we need to make sure that we're doing in order to ensure our success for the quarter? And so that's a lot of what I spend time on. But I've got a deck right here in front of me on things. I don't know if you can see that or not, but audit. There are some things I love speaking with customers, but then there's stuff that are internal, like an audit, where you've got to make sure you're following compliance and all that stuff. That's not quite as much fun, but important to running a business and doing it correctly.
You mentioned the digital mail service. It's very interesting that you've had to pivot given the technologies. I'm just curious what other ways you're using technology in your role to build your business.
Yeah, well, so internally, we're doing a lot with robotics and bots to automate processes that are kind of labor intensive and repetitive. So bots are very helpful with that, and there's a lot to really learn from that. Artificial intelligence as well. So and with AI, it gets the system actually gets smarter as you go through it and you continue to do things with it. But we're using artificial intelligence also at our call centers as customers come in to recommend the right solution to them. So we learn what the right solution is, and if that one really works, that's the solution that we're using. But we're also investing in 3D printing technologies. We are investing in sensors, IoT sensors, so Internet of Things sensors. The U.S. federal government just awarded us a very big project to study the oceans and the seas. 2/3 of the earth is water, and we know very little about it, surprisingly. And so Xerox is heavily engaged in something called DARPA, which is working with the federal government to go and explore and understand the seas better. So we're doing stuff like that. We're investing in clean tech. We're just ranked one of the most sustainable companies in the world. So sustainability is really important to us. It's usually very important to the generation that we're talking to on this Zoom. which is great. And we're investing. We do a lot of things that make us sustainable, which is why we won this award. But we have a lot in our labs focused on what we call clean tech. And one of the applications of that is air conditioning of buildings. How can we do that in a much more efficient way that is more friendly to the environment as well? And we've got several projects going on with that as well. So there's a lot of exciting things that we're investing in technology, some of which we use to run our business, some of which we'll commercialize and sell to customers. And then there's a whole bunch of other solutions that customers are asking for, especially in light of the pandemic. One of them is home office, right? A lot of people are going home, and companies in some cases want them to be able to print at home if that's going to make them more effective. And customers, many customers, especially financial services customers, but also the federal government again, and healthcare, are very concerned about security. A lot of the printers at home might be something you'd buy at a Best Buy, and they may not be secure. They may not have the most security with them. So Xerox has printers that would fit in your home, kind of small form factor, very secure, and we can help manage the content that is being printed on that. So we can kind of report back to the corporation. This was the usage of Mike Feldman at his home. This is how much he printed. This is the files that he printed. And this is the expense that he is also using, right? Because I'll need cartridges and ink and things like that. So these are all the things that customers care about. They care about cost, they care about security, they care about productivity, but you have to manage all that. And you may say, I'm going to give my executives a printer at home, but I'm not going to give everyone a printer at home because of the expense. So these are all the kinds of things that we're working on with customers.
Thank you. Any more student questions?
Yes, I have a couple actually.
Okay.
What is the difference in company culture between B2C and B2B, and how did working at B2B help you grow as an employee?
So I never worked for, I guess, I was saying before we joined on this Zoom to Gary and Randy that I did work at Red Lobster when I was a waiter. I might have mentioned that to you guys as well. So I guess that's B2C. But that would be about my only B2C experience. Other than that, it's been really all B2B. But I think, depending on what your job is, the jobs can be very different or very similar in B2B and B2C. For whatever reason, I guess because I got connected with IBM, I gravitated to B2B quickly. That became what was on my resume and what I was learning, and that was most useful when I was going for the next job, which was HP. But I guess it could have worked in any way. Look, one of the things I would say is you'll find that you spend a lot of time at work, right? So I think for my advice to people is, especially young people, is find what you're passionate about. And if you could match up what you're passionate about with a job that pays you money and is fulfilling from a career standpoint, you put those two things together, it will be very rewarding and you'll probably be very good at it. I loved B2B. I'm a competitive person by nature. I like to win. I never knew that I was going to be in sales, but I kind of found myself in that and I loved it. I love the competitiveness of it. I love to win. I love to deliver value for the customer. And because I love it, because I love what I do, work doesn't seem like such a chore. And it doesn't, at 5 o'clock, it doesn't be like, oh, thank God the day's over and I can go home and do whatever I want. I actually enjoy what I do. So I don't mind working late. I don't mind going out to dinner and then going home and checking email. It's what I love. But what I love isn't necessarily what you all love. So whether you should be in B2B or B2C, or whether you should be in sales, or whether you should be an engineer, or whatever your path is, it's your path, and you have to pick it. But I highly recommend that you pick something you love, because you're going to spend a lot of time on it, and you'll be good at it if you love it, because you're going to apply yourself. You're going to be, become a student of the game of whatever career you're in.
That's fantastic advice.
Okay, this is a question about networking. We have a number of international students here at PACE, especially in the city. With respect to building their networks, it can be a challenge, including language, interests, etc. What should these students do, and what can the university do to help?
Good question. Look, I think joining different groups could be very helpful, and those could be all different types of groups. You know, again, probably things that you care about, things you're passionate about. You know, if you can expand your network by doing things that you really enjoy, and finding time for that, then I think that could be one way to go. Again, the world has changed since I was everyone's age on this phone or this Zoom. Now everything's online. There's probably lots of communities online that, you know, you can find common interest with. And I would say this, and maybe this is maybe one of the most important things about the network conversation. While it's really important to build a network, and I did that, I never did it with the motivation that I'm going to try to get something out of this. Once you do that, you know, people can read you very easily. People know what your intentions are. People can see right through, you know, whatever you're portraying. And you always have to do things from the heart. You have to be ethical. You have to be genuine. You know, you have to, you know, show that you care. And if you do things for the right motivation, then it's great. So when I was building my network, I never thought, let me try to build my network, so maybe this person can help me one day. I really never had that idea whatsoever. It was always, I had a genuine interest in people, and I had a genuine affinity for staying connected with people. And that worked out really well because people got to know me, they got to trust me, they got to like me, and I got to like them. And it was just like great. And then it just happened to be a huge benefit came out of that, because I knew so many people, and it was, you know, when certain jobs came up, I was kind of in the right place at the right time where they thought of me, they called me, things like that. It's the same thing I was saying this about, you know, Mitch, one of my good friends who I went to PACE with. We've just been best friends. You know, he didn't just say, let me try to make this guy my best man at my wedding. Maybe one day I'll have a son and I'll give him a job. You know, it just doesn't work that way, right? So I think you have to always do things for the right reasons, and then do them well. And when that happens and that comes together, you're going to find that life's going to be great. You're going to find your careers. You're going to move up in your careers. You're going to like what you do. You're going to probably be a better person in your personal life too, because you're just going to be happier.
How much travel do you do? Because you're Latin America, North America, it seems like a big range.
It is a big range. I do a fair amount. Haven't been on a plane since about March 5th. My last trip was to DC. I remember I was there meeting some customers, and it was just when we started doing the arm bump instead of the shaking of the hands. And then about a week later, it was the world kind of shut down. We went into lockdown. But normally, I would say I travel about 50% of the time. And there's no one, my boss is the CEO of the company, that's who I report to. He's never said, by the way, in this job, you have to, you know, travel 50%. I travel for what I think I need to do to get my job done. I probably travel more than maybe my predecessor did when he was in this role, because I like being with people. I love being with customers. I think I can grow sales more if I'm out there meeting with people and saying, you know, you have my commitment that we're going to get this job done for you and we're going to do it great. And that's always been, you know, kind of my hallmark. So I love it. Latin America is about, it's about 6% or so of my total revenue. So it's a big region. It takes, you know, more than 10 hours to get to Buenos Aires or to Sao Paulo. And so to Latin America, I'm usually going just twice a year, because it's just not enough revenue for me to spend a lot of time there. I love Latin America. I love the culture down there. I love the food. I love the people. I can speak a little bit of Spanish, but it's not about me. It's not about what I love to do. It's about getting the job done. And the majority of my business is in the US, so that's where I spend my time. Canada is about 10% of our revenue, so I'll proportionally spend about 10% and be in Toronto or Montreal, you know, several times a year. It's much closer. It's an hour flight from JFK or LaGuardia, so that's much easier. So it's all about that. And, you know, on the travel, there's 4 months a year where we're closing the books on the previous quarter, and we're outlooking the next quarter, those months, I don't travel. October is one of those months. It doesn't matter because of the pandemic, but in normal times in October, I don't travel because there's just too many internal meetings in getting ready for earnings disclosures and preparing the outlooks for the next quarter. And that happens 4 times a year. But all the other months, I try to get out there. And when I go out, I meet with customers, but I'll meet with our partners. I'll meet with our employees. I'll do town hall meetings. I take the time to do those things. I'll have dinner with employees or with customers because I think when you're there, you've got to give it your all. Even though I spend the majority of my time in the U.S. is a big country. And, I could find myself, in Seattle only once a year, sometimes once every 2 years. I mean, I can't get there every other week. So when I'm there, I try to maximize my time.
So it sounds like the personal interaction is really important, and you may not pivot to total Zoom business, right?
I hope not. We actually did a study of this. It was called the Future of Work Study. And the study we did was just about 3 months ago. So kind of in the middle of the pandemic. And we surveyed 600 people, all kind of like IT professionals. And what they told us was that they expect 82% of their workforce to return to the office over the next 12 to 18 months. Now, does it mean they're returning full time, 5 days a week, or will there be continued hybrid of work from home and work in the office? That's possible. But I would say this, we had Zoom before the pandemic. And we all went into the office. And why? Because, you can build culture in the office. You can have impromptu meetings. You can, have these papers out here and we can kind of mark them up together. It's very productive to be face-to-face. And I think that people don't want to be stuck in their apartment in New York City or house in the suburbs with distractions of family members and dogs and kids and other things going on. It's not conducive to this is how I want to spend the rest of my life in my career. I really enjoy being in an office. So I think it's going to take some time. And I think there's going to be some changes maybe that are permanent, but I don't think that, we will completely see the office go away by any stretch of the imagination. Quite the opposite.
I'm glad to hear that. Being in New York, we really do need to come back.
Yeah.
Any other questions from students? Anybody want to?
Yes, I have a couple actually.
Great.
So we were just talking about the pandemic. Taking that into consideration, I don't think we would, this is from a student, by the way. I don't think we would exactly have a huge list of jobs and internships to choose from, which is why finding a job you're passionate about might be tough. So what would you recommend in regards to that?
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think I got very lucky in just kind of fitting into a job that I didn't know that I would love, by the way, or have passion for, but I wound up having passion for it, and it was great. And I know not everyone is going to be as fortunate, for sure. By the way, I think, in addition to this pandemic that's been going on over the past year, we've seen all the racial injustice that has happened. That has been happening for 400 years in this country, but has come to light, I think, in a very big way with videos on phones where we can see someone like George Floyd being murdered right in front of our eyes. And I think people have really just had enough. But I personally, I know maybe other people feel differently, I personally believe in this thing called white privilege. So I think I've been very fortunate and have had privilege that not everybody gets. And I hope that changes in this country, and I hope that changes around the world. But look, with all that said, and knowing that, like the question asked, you may not have the luxury of finding a job that is like your passion. I get that. I think, look, just keep searching for your passion. At some point, look, I took that job with UARCO Business Forums. I wound up never working for them, but I interviewed with a number of companies. To me, that was the best one. And I then got a job with HP and found that, HP was going to be better, and that was great. But you always have some choices. Pick the best of the choice you have. And what I would say is, if it's not your passion, after some period of time, that could be 3 months or that could be a year, you'll quickly know this is not my passion. And at that point, you don't have to quit that day, but it should be an alarm bell for you to say, I need to find something else. You should be happy. You should love what you do. That doesn't mean the first job is going to be that way. So be patient with it, but don't give up on yourself. And I can tell you in my career, I remember I took a job once that I knew, well, at least I thought, this is not, it was while I was at HP. So over the 24 years, I took a job working in our server division. And the job was to manage all of our product managers. It didn't involve much customer interfacing, which is what I love to do. It was a lot of spreadsheets. It was working with manufacturing. How many servers should we build? Where are we storing them? It was very analytical, and it was very, intensive when it came to spreadsheets and internal meetings, kind of all the things I really don't love. But I said to myself, I think I need a job like this. Otherwise, I'm going to be branded just a sales guy. And maybe I'll never have that corporate executive job that I want where I'm running a real business. And so I said, let me go do this. I did the job, and I realized in the job I was right. I don't love this job, but it's important for me. So I'm going to apply myself. I'm going to learn in this job everything I need to learn, but I'm not going to stay in the job for 10 years because I don't love this job. So I stayed in that job for about 18 months, got out of that, used my network, knew someone that I had worked with my first day at HP. He had a job for me. That was a great job, kind of back in customer facing environment in sales. And I took that job. And the last job I had at HP before I left the company was a pretty big job, and it was a general manager job, and it wasn't just sales. It was running a P&L, profit and loss kind of statement with revenue and profit and all this stuff. And in this job, there were about 11 or 12 executives, all internal to HP, that went for that job. And I got it. And it was down to me and one other woman, and we were both good candidates, but I got the job, and I was told I'm getting the job because I have that experience where I ran a P&L, I worked with manufacturing, I worked with supply chain, I worked with our labs, other things besides just sales. So that turned out to be extremely helpful in my career. And again, you make a little bit of a sacrifice. It's not what I had passion for, but I needed it. And so you got to do some of that sometimes too, early in your career or midway through in your career, if you know that the thing you want in the future is something that is going to be pretty broad.
Okay, this next question is a long one, a little bit.
Okay.
So you mentioned that your company invests in clean, sustainable technologies. A common argument I hear companies make is that it's not cheap to install or upkeep clean technologies. What would you say to that argument? Do you at Xerox analyze the expense of having clean energy? And how would you say its benefits outweigh its costs?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I don't have a great answer for you, and I'll tell you why. We don't have any products regarding clean tech on the market today. So this is in our labs. We have a big lab. It's kind of a famous lab called PARC, and it stands for Palo Alto Research Center. It's where Steve Jobs invented the Macintosh. It's where Bill Gates invented WYSIWYG and the Microsoft interface that became very, very popular. So it's in Silicon Valley, very close to HP, by the way, which is just a coincidence, but it's a Xerox company. It's called PARC. They're the ones right now, they're in our labs, they're working on these clean tech solutions, but we haven't commercialized it yet. So we haven't sold it yet. I think though, the answer will have to probably be that it can't be much more expensive than a non-clean tech or a more traditional, let's say, air conditioning type of system. It may be more expensive up front, but then over the course of time, if you're using a lot less energy, your total cost of ownership over a 3-year period perhaps will be a lot less. So, think of it like solar panels on your house. It might cost a lot of money to put those in, but once you do, you're not paying for those energy bills anymore. And over time, it outweighs that, and it's great for the environment. And companies care about this. Companies do care about sustainability. They do get metriced on it. Their board of directors are asking them questions about what they're doing to be more sustainable. When we go to bid on business, a lot of our customers in the response asks us, please tell us how sustainable you are, what makes you sustainable. And are you energy efficient? Are your products energy efficient? What do you do with the toner cartridges when we finish them? Are they hitting the landfill, or are you disposing them in an environmentally friendly way? Customers are paying attention to all of these things. And so I think people could be willing to pay a little more at the onset, but want to see over time it probably be as inexpensive or less than what the current methods are. And that's probably what would happen in this environment too. But we're still probably a year away from bringing something to market. So it's still very much in more of a conceptual feel, and we're doing some pilots.
What do you do with those cartridges? Do those go back to Xerox?
They go back to Xerox. We allow customers to ship them back to us, and then we dispose of them of an environmentally friendly way. We break them down, all according to EPA standards that allow us to say that nothing is hitting the landfill. Yeah, absolutely.
Diana?
What obstacles did you come across during your career, and how did you address them?
One of the things that worked out well for me in working for HP is a big company, and they're headquartered in California. I, of course, live here in New York and started working for HP here in New York. And one of the things that was very helpful was I was flexible on my location. So HP came to me after a few years. They came to me and said, "We have a job for you in Maryland, right outside of DC in Rockville, Maryland. Are you interested?" And I didn't know anyone there, but I said, sure, because it was a career opportunity. I said, I'll do it. I got the job. I interviewed for it internally, got the job, went there, worked there for 2 years. While I was there, the server division that was based in California, in the Bay Area, noticed my work. I said, "But geez, Mike's doing a really great job. We kind of need someone in the server division. Let's see if he's interested." They asked me, and I said yes. And I still remember this. I said yes to it, and I was literally getting ready to pack up and move to California. I'm a New Yorker. I've been in California maybe once or twice in my life. Now I'm moving there, and I don't know anybody. And I am thousands of miles away, and I get this feeling in my stomach, like, what did I do? Like, what? Like, maybe this is a bad decision. I mean, I'm going to be very far away from my family, my friends. I don't know anyone out there. But I did it, and it worked out to be great. It was all fine, and I love California. But that flexibility was really helpful in moving around in my career. And by the way, when Xerox, the way I left HP was I took, believe it or not, an early retirement option. So HP had this thing where you had to, in order to qualify for an early retirement severance, you had to have 65 points. And the way you get your points is your age plus your time of service, your years of service to HP. I was 45 years old and had worked for the company for 24 years, 69 points. I qualified, and it was a very nice package. Like, there was like an incentive. They really didn't want people like me to leave because I was so young still, but it was meant for people that were maybe in their 60s and things like that. But by law, they couldn't discriminate. They had to offer it to everyone that qualified, and since it qualified, I took it. And so I figured, you know what? I've been working nonstop my entire career, right through Pace University, right after Pace University. I left IBM on a Friday and started HP on a Monday. I've never had a sabbatical, never had a break. I said, let me take this early retirement option. I'm going to raise my hand, and let me take a year off. I want to go really learn Spanish. I took it in school, but I want to get a Spanish tutor and really get good, because you lose it, obviously. I want to learn to cook. I want to travel. I want to do some things for myself. It was very millennial kind of thing to do. But I said, I'm going to invest in myself here. So I did that, and I took the retirement. And sure enough, Xerox called me a few months later and said, we're interested in the job. And when they called me, I said to them, the first thing I said on the phone is, I know you're based in the East Coast. Their headquarters is Norwalk, Connecticut, so not far from New York City, about an hour north of here. I said, but I live in LA, and I love LA. I want to stay in LA. So I don't want to come out and interview and meet with you if that's a problem, because I don't want to move back east. And the HR recruiter said, we're a global company. It's fine if you want to stay in California. So I said, okay. And I came out. I met the executive team, everyone but the CEO. Had great meetings. Went home literally the next day. They called me and said, you did well. The CEO would like to see you next week. Can you fly back? I'm like, okay, sure. I fly back. CEO likes me. And the hiring manager, which was one level below the CEO at the time, this is 8 years ago, said, so, where are you going to live? New York City? Because you don't have to live here in Connecticut if you don't want to. And I'm like, what? I said, I thought I could stay in LA. That was like part of the deal. And then the guy was like, we're going to hire you for like a big job, a global job. You need to be here in New York. You're going to be managing Europe. The time difference between California and Europe is too much. You need to be here. And once again, I decided to be flexible. Luckily, my husband was flexible and was willing to relocate and give up his career and start over. So that worked out okay. But that flexibility was really important in all of my career. And, that's one of those things where sometimes you'll have a feeling in your gut like maybe you don't want to do it. But if it's for the right job and it's an opportunity, take a chance. Like I said, if I were to move to California and hated it, nothing says I had to stay there forever. But I wound up loving it, and you get new experiences that way.
So you alluded a little bit to work-life balance. How do you manage that?
Yeah, this is one of those things that, everyone has to do for themselves. There's no handbook on it, and your manager, wherever you're working, is not going to tell you what to do, and it's different for everyone. I read a book once, I forget what it was years ago. I don't even know if it was a book or maybe it was a paper, but the idea was forget about work-life balance and think about work-life blending. Because the point of the paper was when it's balanced, when you're at work, you're feeling guilty about your family life. And when you're with your family at a kid's game or something, you want to check your work email, but you feel guilty. And so you're trying to constantly balance this. And really, we have to blend these things. And that's worked for me. Today I had a break in my schedule. I had a meeting from 8 to 10. I was free from 10 to 11:30, and I went to the gym and got a workout in. Because it's not about punching a clock. It's not about, I'll work at night tonight. I'll work from 8 to 10 tonight. So it's about getting the job done. But if I want to get a workout in the middle of the day, I can do that. You have to, we all get one life, right? So you have to have a great life. That's part of my message, I think, today. And I didn't kind of come with that idea, but I think I'm kind of like coming on to that. You got to love what you do. I'm in a great relationship. We have a dog. Like, life is good. Life needs to be, I want life to be good for everyone. And you have to find your ways. I'm in a great relationship right now, but I've had bad ones before. But you got to get out of those and get into a good relationship. And you got to think about what's important to you. When I was at HP, they wanted me to take a job in Boise, Idaho. I didn't want to go to Boise, Idaho. It's like, I'm sorry, I'm gay. I'm like, I'm not going to Boise. Is there any other gay people there? I don't even know, but I'm not doing it. So you have to make some choices in your life too. Like, you can't be all career, right? I said flexibility and where you work is important. Yes, but you want me to fly? You want me to live in San Francisco or LA? Okay, that sounds great. Boise, Idaho? I don't think so. People love Boise, so nothing against it, but it wasn't for me. And you have to know when to say no and say, no, that's not good for me. So I love to work out. I love to travel. I love to do the things I want to do, and I'm going to find time to do that. And at the same time, I'm going to get great results for whatever job I'm in with my company. And they're never going to have to worry about me. They're not going to have to be like, hey, you should be in the office because we're not sure when you're not here, like, where are you? Or are you getting the job done? I'm getting the job done. Even when I go to the gym, no one is waiting for me to get back to them. Like last night, I cleared out all my emails. I responded to everyone. People know that I'm heavily engaged. But yeah, you got to find what's important to you. For me, life fitness, working out, really, really important. Home life and, things like that, critical.
Liana, any last questions before we run out of time?
One last question. At this time in our history, there's a lot of conversation around what good leadership looks like. Can you share your feelings and what you think great leadership looks like?
Yes. Look, I think you got to be very ethical. You've got to be a good person. You got to be authentic. You got to be real. You got to be honest. You got to be willing to roll up your sleeves and do the job that you're asking people to do. You've got to communicate well. I really think leadership, a lot of what leadership is about communication. So people need to know where they stand with you. They need to know what the direction is. As I mentioned, I run a multi-billion-dollar business here, and I have thousands of employees. I don't want them guessing what we should be doing. I want to be very clear about, hey, here are the things that are working for us. These are the solutions we want to double down on. We all want to be rowing this boat in the same direction. that's how we're going to win in the marketplace. So communication is really important. But, teamwork is a big part of leadership. Just, all the things that, are common sense. We've all seen great leaders in our life. So we all know what great leadership is. We all know what terrible leadership is. And you see it. And by the way, that's true, working for different people throughout my career. I've been working for 30 years. I've worked for a lot of different people. And you learn what you love and what you hate. And, maybe one of the reasons I respond to Randy the way I did is I had a manager at HP once who she would never respond to my emails. Like 10 days would go by. And finally, I'd make a decision to do it. I was like asking for her advice or permission. Then after a certain period of time, you just got to go do it. I do it. And then she would send the email like on the 11th day saying, "Oh, I don't think we should do that." And I'm like, too late, and it's frustrating. So I learned that I didn't like the way that felt. So I'm not going to treat anyone below me that way. So when people email me, I respond, and I respond in a timely fashion, and I give them feedback, quickly. So you learn what you like and what you don't like. And, whether it's our elected officials or heads of sports teams or our teachers at school, our family members, I think we all can see what great leadership is. But I think the traits, the simple traits of good communication, honesty, hard work, teamwork, team player, all of that is, great to do. And value people, and never demean, never bully, never talk down to people, especially in a public setting. If you need to give someone hard feedback, do it one-on-one in a quiet place. You don't have to do that in front of, all of their peers. Those basic things.
It's great advice, and I'm sure you're wonderful to work for.
I think so. No, I'm kidding.
I'd like to thank you so much for joining us for the Dean's Roundtable. We've learned so much about Xerox and your role, and how students can take their careers to the next level and launch themselves. And I really appreciate your candidness and your interesting responses to all of the questions. And I'd like to thank all the students for joining us, and wish everyone a really great afternoon. And thank you again. It's been really a pleasure to host you, Mike.
The pleasure was all mine. It was my honor to do this, and I wish all of you a lot of success. And stay safe. Be careful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Thanks, Gary.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.